fucking Palmer, and you are watching Moshcam. That's right. That was my last show in Sydney. Yeah, I had that hickey for 2 weeks. That's right, that was here. No, that has only happened that one time. That was a special event. That was an exclusive hickey, it's insane hickey chick. I think when you're an artist, the fans reflect you. So if you're if you're a passionate performer and you put on a very, very emotional show, you'll tend to draw passionate, emotional people back at you. But the fan base is really a community. I mean, I'm a big part of it and I've led it, but they take care of each other really beautifully, which makes me very proud to see all of these people connecting through me accidentally, but then staying connected purposefully and having whole stories with each other that have nothing to do with me. That makes me feel like I'm doing my job. Yeah, I mean, this tour I've been doing a lot of house parties, which has been, it's like the opposite of this. It's 50 people in someone's house and no outsiders. And those have all been incredible and all totally different. And I mean, the one I did a few nights ago in Brisbane was just, it was crazy. It was like an hour outside of town. There were kids running around. There were all these local musicians. And on a night like that, I can't believe that I'm so lucky that like this is my job, technically kind of getting paid to do it. And I just, I feel like it's almost not fair. But I do a lot of hard work in the background to make all of that shit happen. A lot of boring emailing and organizing and traveling to get to that moment where it's like 3 hours of total bliss. And I had a really wonderful experience in Perth delivering another Kickstarter package where I drew one of my fans. I spent a whole afternoon with her, and her family cooked me lunch, and we went out to a park near her house, and I did a beautiful naked drawing of her. And I really like my fans. I think that's one thing that, if I didn't like them and it wasn't interesting to talk to them and hang out with them, I'd have a real problem. I wouldn't like doing this stuff. But generally, my fans are really cool. Yeah, that was a crazy show. Well, it was the beginning of tour, first of all. We'd only been on the road a month, I think. And I got a phone call that night about 2 hours before we went on stage that one of my good friends back in Boston had died unexpectedly. She was 28. She was just found. She was found, and I still don't know how she died. And it was so shocking to me because it was just completely out of the blue. And when the phone rang, I was expecting, and I saw the look on the face of the person saying, you need to, the phone didn't actually ring because someone reached out to my tour manager and said, Amanda needs to call her assistant, something's happened, and told him what, but he didn't want to tell me. He wanted me to call in. And when that happens, you know something terrible is going on. And I assumed it was my friend who was sick, who had either taken a turn for the worse or something, or worse yet. And it was just such a bolt out of the blue. And then I didn't tell the crowd what had happened. I told my band, and I told a couple people backstage who knew her and knew what she meant to me. Because she had been in a bunch of my videos and worked with the band and, you know, slept in my apartment a lot. She was like a real friend of my art family, Becca. And I got on stage and I have actually looked at some of the footage of that gig, and it's like, oh my God, I'm so, like, totally out of it. And my voice sounds terrible because I've been crying and stuff and talking all night. But I remember the gig being amazing because I had a couple of moments where I like looked at my hands actually, and it occurred to me that her body was somewhere cold and dead, and it was just like I just had one of those like surreal mortal moments where I was like, oh my God, holy shit, like somewhere she's lying and her hands aren't moving, and I'm on a stage in front of a bunch of people. Like, how random is it? And it was really inspiring. It wasn't a bad feeling. It was a bizarre feeling of just that like amazement at the fact that I exist. And then I had another moment, I think it was like during Astronaut, which was one of her favorite songs. And I had been really sad all night, but it didn't really hit me until that song, when a single thought passed through my mind and I lost it. And the thought that ran through my mind was, like, she's dead and I get it, and people live and die, and that just sucks, it's inevitable. But she's never gonna hear music again. And she was this passionate music lover. And that destroyed me. It was weird, but I was like, just the fact that she was never gonna hear any more music, that killed me. It wasn't the idea that she was dead, it was the idea that she would never hear music. And I remember during Astronaut, there was a point where I just like thought that and then couldn't keep saying. And I think the band just kept playing and I just sort of like had my little moment and then found myself again. And I changed after that gig. I became much braver on stage as a front person because I was so out of it that night and just didn't care. I was like, how can I care about this? Like, this rock show is great, but like people die. It doesn't matter what happens on stage tonight. I can do anything I want, and it's fine. And that gave me all of this bravery to just act a little crazier than usual, which I noticed drew the crowd towards me, and I was like, wow, why am I not doing this all the time? Why am I being so safe? And I've carried that with me. I kind of like hopped up a step. Yeah, that was one of those magical shows. All of those guests showed up totally last minute. I ran into Scroobius Pip like 2 days before that at the BBC. We had never met, but I was a fan of his stuff, and Richard O'Brien came out of the woodwork, and I love that my show is like that. I mean, that's happening tonight. We've got all these random special guests doing weird things, and that's, you know, if I didn't leave it open like that and add people last minute all the time, I'd get really bored, you know? So doing things like that makes it feel like live music. You can see the footage, basically. I created this dress with a giant train that like sweeps over the crowd, and the crowd keeps the train lifted. And it was originally Michael's idea, the drummer on that tour, that there was no way it possibly physically could have happened, but we wanted the backdrop to turn into a dress. So like the backdrop was gonna detach and I was gonna bring the backdrop into the crowd. And it was just not physically possible. But then I was like, well, what if we just made a dress and brought it on stage? And so we kind of collaborated on that idea. It was one of the best ideas that came out of that tour. And it hasn't been washed since last September, which is why it has to air out every night, because Brett has to put it in his bag, and it's just like, we could go visit it. Let's go visit it. So this is the dress itself. And so the base of the dress, the coat of the dress, is actually from the Who Killed Amanda Palmer tour, and it was custom made by a company called Skin Graft in LA. And I only wore it during the entrance of the tour because this is not a coat you can play piano in or crowd surfing. It's too delicate, too constricting. But I shipped it to Cambrielle, who's this clothing designer I know, and we picked up the fabric, and she just attached it to the coat, and and the tails cover it, and it's probably about 30 feet long, and it's just sheer fabric, big bolts of it just attached to each other. And when it spreads out, it can fit over about 100 people. And part of the inspiration for it came from this thing that we used to do in school. Did you guys ever do the thing with a parachute in school? So when we were kids, there was this one gym activity that we used to do. We would all get in the gym, and the gym teacher would bring out a parachute, a big, giant parachute. And 50 kids would like stand on the outside of it, and we would wave it and lift it up, and we'd all run under it. And this reminds me of that. There's something really great and childlike about being trapped under a piece of fabric. So that is the dress.
I'm sure you get a lot of gropings when you do.
A lot of gropings? Not really. People are more concerned about just keeping me aloft. I've gotten a couple gropings. I don't mind them. It's fine. It's part of the territory.